Well, I'm here today with Tim Macindoe. I'm just going to ask him a couple of questions about what National's issues are for the election, or more in particular, what your issues are as to what you're going to be campaigning for. And as I've mentioned before, you're quite welcome to bring up the housing issue, because every politician I interview is probably going to discuss it.
Absolutely, and it is a big issue for the election.
Yeah. So, what's the main push for National this election, and particularly yourself? What's your main issues that you're going to be campaigning on?
Okay, well, thanks, Lance, for this opportunity to contribute to your interviews of the different candidates for the electorates here in Hamilton. I'm seeking re-election as the incumbent MP for Hamilton West, and I very much appreciate the support I've had in the past and would be honoured to continue. I think that Hamilton is going through a really good phase. There's a lot of growth, development, vibrancy and job creation. So all of that is important, and I'm very keen to ensure that we pursue policies that will maintain that will ensure that we have good opportunities for those who are new to our region, for our young school leavers and so on. And you've touched on housing. That clearly is a very important part of it, because we've had quite significant population growth here in Hamilton for quite a few years now. At the forum we've been attending today, the Mayor made the comment, I think, that we've got 84 new people coming in was it every day or every week? Either way.
Every week, I think it was.
A lot of people coming in.
Yeah.
Now they need schools for their children to attend, homes to live in. They want to ensure that they have jobs, access to good quality health services and so on. And therefore, for me as the local MP, advocating in Wellington for policies that are going to continue to provide those opportunities and stay ahead of demand is very, very important. And those give rise to a whole lot of different issues, but they're uppermost in my thinking about what's important.
Cool. Now, the other issue I feel I need to bring up for a number of reasons is mental health, or health in general, but in particular mental health. And what's National's stance, or what are they going to be doing on things relating to access to help with mental health? I know one of the things people forget, which is different than normal health issues, is that with mental health issues, it's quite a challenge, because first of all, someone has to get over the hurdle of admitting they need help. Then they have to work up the courage to ask for help. The next step is dealing with the huge big mountain that is bureaucracy, which often causes some people to hit a brick wall and go, I can't be bothered with the stress, and they back off. And that's where often a lot of suicides or attempted suicides occurs, when people decide the bureaucracy is too hard, it's easier to attempt suicide. And I'm just wondering, what's National's policy on that?
Health generally is a huge issue, and I'm proud of the expansion of our health services here in Hamilton, and in particular want to acknowledge all the tremendous work that people are doing. But specifically on the issue of mental health, and you're quite right to mention it in the context of suicide, because while not all people who have mental health issues are grappling with that issue, the two are clearly linked, and our very worrying incidence of suicide is something that I think disturbs each and every one of us. And that's why right at this moment there is a public consultation period open. I think it goes through till the 19th of June on aspects of how we are dealing with the whole issue of suicide in New Zealand. There was a Law Commission report published just a few years ago on suicide reporting. We now have much better access to the information about it, but what we still haven't got on top of is some of the underlying factors that are contributing to the very worrying incidence of suicide in our rural communities, and in particular amongst our youth. So I do encourage everybody to take advantage of that opportunity to have your say. And if you need to, you should be able to find it on the government website just by Googling that topic, but if necessary, contact my office and I'll be happy to send a link to it. There's also the related issue of drug abuse, and we know that we have a very major problem in New Zealand with a large number of people involved in many cases in very hard drugs, particularly methamphetamine, and we're doing what we can, but there's always more that can be done to try to ensure that we both have appropriate education and support for those who need help to grapple with addictions. Because when when we talk about these issues, we actually have to come back to the housing question as well,
Yeah.
because many of those who are grappling with mental health and addiction issues end up being the homeless in our community. None of us wants to see anybody sleeping rough or grappling with significant mental health challenges, because if they are, and if they're dealing with those things alone, then the consequences can be tragic. So for that reason, I really strongly support the work of the People's Project here in Hamilton, who've done terrific work in recent times in dealing with not only with the issue of homelessness, but a whole wraparound service. And I'll come back to that, but I just want to make the point that they're doing so well that the model that they're following has been picked up by the government now and is actually being rolled out around the country. So it's another area where Hamilton is leading the way, and I do say a huge thanks to the people behind the People's Project, because there's been a significant reduction in the number of people sleeping rough in Hamilton, and ideally we'll carry on until there is no one at all in that position. Now, the important thing about the program, as I say, is just wraparound service, because simply saying to somebody, hey, we don't want you sleeping in a doorway on Victoria Street or whatever, we want to ensure that you're in appropriate housing, particularly as we move into the winter months, so that you're out of the cold and have adequate shelter. It's not enough just to deal with that issue.
Yeah.
You've actually got to provide a wraparound service to come to a greater understanding of why they're in that position in the first place. And that's why I'm such a strong supporter of our government's social investment program, because what we're saying is we've got to put the resources around that person so that we can deal with their unmet health issues, so that we can deal with the addiction problem that may, and is in many cases is, a major factor behind the homelessness, so that we can try to help them to become ready for employment. Because if they're unemployed and perhaps long-term benefit dependent, there's far more chance that they're going to end up homeless or unable to afford adequate housing. So putting all of those aspects and others around them is such a critical part of dealing with the homeless issue, and I'm a very strong supporter of that and acknowledge the great work that the People's Project is doing under the auspices of government direction and funding here.
Cool.
It is a good program, but of course there's still more to be done.
So National, what just essentially saying is National's recognising that these things are linked together.
Yes,
homelessness
absolutely.
can cause depression, drug addiction can cause be a contributing factor to homelessness, and the homelessness, drug addiction, mental health, there is links in there that mean that if a wraparound service is put into place, you deal with not just one at a time, but the whole lot together.
Absolutely. These issues are interlinked, and while each agency or each person dealing with an aspect of them is certainly doing valuable work, and I want to acknowledge that as well, it's where the wraparound service is tackling all of the contributing factors to the problems that the people are living with that you're going to get the best result. And actually that's why I've been a long-term supporter of the whānau concept, which was a policy brought to government by the Maori Party when they became part of the current governing relationship. And as I say, it's based on the overarching strategy of wraparound services, rather than having 7 or 8 different government department cars backed up a driveway, each dealing with an issue in isolation, such as truancy for one person and drug addiction for another, and glue ear or whatever the unmet health need might be. Having people who get to know the client as a person or as a family, and then looking to say, what are the different needs? It might be a gambling addiction, it might be drug or alcohol, it could be a whole range of different things. Where you're dealing with those issues in totality and really getting to know the person and investing in their needs holistically, you are far more likely to have good results.
Yeah, because depression itself has its roots in any one or more of those issues for whatever reason. It could stem from a loss of a family member that then migrates into alcoholism or drug addiction,
Loss
and
of a job, a divorce,
all those things.
People who may not know that they're susceptible to depression or some form of mental illness can have one of those events in life that just triggers a real change, and we don't know when that might happen to us. I mean, a major tragedy in a family might be enough to do it.
Yeah, and that's something people also need to recognise, is the fact that each one of us is susceptible to something like that, no matter how much we think we are secure in our own minds about that we'd never go down that. There is potentially that one thing in life that may take us down one of those tracks, and having a safety net there to recognise that and put in place what's needed and help us as a holistic solution, because of the fact that you're just recognising that your lack of interest in doing something might relate to a major event which has caused you to suffer depression and, all those things, even bad health. You take today we're here at your monthly meeting. Paula Bennett's got Paula Southgate. Sorry, get the right Paula. Paula Southgate's got on crutches now. For someone who's incredibly active, if you're not prepared for that, that can be quite depressing. And things like that. You suddenly discover that because of ailments, you have to be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. My mother dealt with that. She was a very active person, and when she got to the stage where she had to be in a wheelchair, it took her a while to get through that because she was used to being involved in things.
And actually, for older people, it can be the onset of a really debilitating long-term illness. Parkinson's, dementia, a whole range of different things which have a huge difference. The loss of a spouse or a long-time life partner, the upheaval of being in a family home for a long time and suddenly being on your own. There are all those sorts of things. At the other end, one of the other things that I've been very pleased to see, and which I will continue to advocate for, is getting ideally 100% of our children into early childhood education. But we've set very ambitious targets, and we now have almost all of our young people going through early childhood education. There are still a few who would like to engage, but all the evidence shows us that if we can get them into stable early childhood education, they are far more likely to be prepared to start school at the age of 5 or maybe 6, depending on the parent's choice, and then to make a success of their early years in education. If they get that good start, then the chances are that we've made a major investment that will serve them well for a lifetime. If they don't, then there's a lot of evidence that they're likely to fall through the cracks, even maybe as early as 8 or 9 years of age. And so there are a whole lot of these things. Unfortunately, Lance, as you're probably aware, there are so many different worthy projects out there. Governments can't fund them all. Because ultimately, every dollar we spend is a dollar of your money and everybody else who's paying taxes in this country. But we are interested in the evidence of things that work. And that's what pushes my buttons as an MP.
Okay.
If I can see that something works, then my strong sense is, why wouldn't we fund it?
Yeah.
But we've got to have the evidence that that program will be effective, because there are lots of different things competing for that taxpayer dollar. And I want for your children and for everybody else's children exactly the same opportunities I had growing up in New Zealand and that I've tried to provide for my children, because I want every young New Zealander to grow up feeling loved, feeling valued, feeling that they have an opportunity to get ahead. And that's ultimately why I'm in politics, and will continue to push for anything that will achieve those outcomes.
Cool. Well, that's a very positive approach to it. And I think most people probably quite like that angle. It's a nice way of looking at things.
Well, in my mind, it's the only way of looking at things.
Yeah, and it's forward thinking.
I mean, this is a great country. We've got so many great things going for us, but we also have some major challenges, and we've touched on a number of them in this interview. And it's up to me and those who are involved in the political process to help lead the debate and to value and enable those who are in our communities doing the work, particularly up front with the families and the young people and those who are at risk. And when we can get that right, we're all going to benefit.
And I also think it's up to the voters to look at the candidates that are discussing these things and looking at moving forward with these various solutions and approaches that will help the community, to use that as a deciding factor when it comes to voting, and not just ignore the whole thing, but to actually look who's actually putting in the effort to make New Zealand better for everyone and vote accordingly.
And that's what elections are all about.
Yeah.
So could I encourage everybody who may still be watching or listening, do please check that you're enrolled, or if you're a young person, get enrolled as soon as you can once you turn 18 and exercise your right to vote, because it's not just a right, I think it is a social responsibility. We get the government that we deserve, and therefore we should all have our say on election day.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. I know you've got to rush off to something, so you look
I'm only an hour and 20 minutes late for my next event.
you look relatively calm for someone who's about to shoot out the door faster than I can move, probably. But yeah, so thanks very much for your time, and good luck in the elections.
Thank you, Lance. Appreciate it, and thanks to everyone for watching.